your name, actually, and writing. So you might not realise this, but writing your name is something that you're most probably the best at doing. You know, don't put it on your CV, but everyone is really, really good at writing their name because you've been writing your name since you were 3, 4 or 5 years old. And you can most probably, if you close your eyes and write your name, you can try this today, you can most probably still write it really perfectly, even with your eyes closed, with the hand that you write with, so either your right hand or your left hand. Now some people can actually do it with both, but I think even if you can do it with both, I do think that you'll most probably have one side which is slightly stronger, and it will be almost perfect even with your eyes closed. So if you go to the other hand, this is not for the people that can write with both hands, because some people are ambidextrous, but you'll find that actually it's really difficult to write with your other hand, and you won't be able to do it with your eyes closed. It'll go all a bit wonky. And the reason for that is because you have practiced it so many times that you are that good at it. And actually, all skills are like that, but with writing your name, you've just done it so many times that you haven't realised that you've been practicing. Okay? And your brain can actually rewire. So if you've ever broken your arm, I don't know if anyone in the room's ever broken their writing hand, and this happened to my daughter last summer. She broke her right hand, so she ended up having to write with her left hand. She was only 5 at the time, so actually she could write her name, but it wasn't actually as good as maybe you can write it. And actually, with the 6 weeks that she had her cast on, she totally transferred to her other arm, and she could just write with her left hand. She's actually transferred back again now, because that's obviously her dominant hand. But she rewired her brain in those 6 weeks just to be able to write with the other hand. Now, this is quite a simple example of how it is possible to rewire your brain. So even something you think you can't do, so you might think you can't write with your left hand, actually, you would be able to. So if something happened to your hand that you write with, and you couldn't use it anymore, eventually, over time, you would just learn to write with the other hand, and that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So any skill can be learned as long as you keep practicing it. Okay? We're going to just have a little watch of this video. This is about rewiring.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So that's just about how it is possible to rewire your brain. So even if you think in a certain way, like I said, it is actually possible. The more you keep thinking about something in a different way, you can actually rewire the brain. So that's actually a video we were going to watch last assembly, but I didn't have time to put it in. my brain is in a certain, state. I'm not learning at the moment, I'm presenting. So you go into different states, don't you? So you might be in a social situation. So if you're just talking to someone and they're telling you a story, you might be listening in on that, but you might not be necessarily learning and recalling it. You might just be chatting away. You might be giving out information rather than trying to retain it. And actually, there are lots of different states. You might be in an emotional state. You might be really panicking about something, and then your brain is doing something very, very different. And this all makes sense, doesn't it? It's quite an obvious thing. So actually, in terms of your learning brain, you actually have to kind of be in that mode. Because if you're not in that mode, you won't be able to learn. And this is a kind of problem that you might have experienced as you come out from the playground or at lunchtime, and your brain has been in one mode, and then you step into a classroom and you have to start learning. You do actually have to really think about getting into the right mode. If you carry on chatting to your friend about what you were talking about, you're not going to be in the right frame of mind. And that's actually quite obvious when you think about it, isn't it? Of course, you have to make sure that your brain is ready to receive that information from your teachers. Because if you're not ready to receive the information, it doesn't matter what they do, you are not going to learn. So actually just think about that as you go into your lessons today, particularly the ones after break and the ones after lunch. And actually, going from lesson to lesson, you might need to kind of switch modes and think about how your brain goes. But also, as you're walking between lessons, that is a time for your brain to have a rest. Because actually the brain does need regular rest. So if you're in a deep state of learning, have a little rest, and then you go into another state of learning. So I want to talk to you about this lady that I discovered quite recently. She's called Jenja. She's Swedish, and she has got the world record for memorising the most number of names. And she became So she became famous because she remembered the whole IKEA catalogue. I think it was the 2012 edition. So she totally memorised the IKEA catalogue, and people could go to any page and say, what is on this page, and she knew. And she talks about, we're going to watch a video with her in a minute, she talks about having a creative memory over rote memory. So rote memory is you just try and learn it. Whereas actually, what she does is she creates like a creative world to remember things. Now actually, again, you may not have really thought about it, but it's really obvious. Have you ever thought that there are some things you remember and some things you don't? Your brain, actually, everything goes into it, but some things you remember and some things you don't. So if you think about last week, why is it that some days you most probably won't remember anything about it? Whereas some days you can say exactly what you ate for lunch, who you were sitting next to, and what you were talking about. But you might not know that for every day. So why is it that your brain decides to remember some things and not remember other things? And there's been loads of studies on this, because there have been people that have got like super memories and actually do seem to be able to remember lots and lots of things, and other people don't, because your brain does actually choose how it remembers things. So just if you think back to a holiday that you've been on, you might remember where you went, and you think, I can't really remember much about it, but I do remember this one night. And it might have been a really exciting night that something happened. Or you might have remembered that there was a big storm and your room flooded when you were on your room flooded in the hotel. Because actually, in that moment, you were so emotionally driven because your room flooded, that actually you will remember that, okay? So, if something more exciting happens, you are more likely to remember it. We'll talk about this a little bit more. Jenja's just going to talk about a book, actually, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about as well. There's a video, guys.
Hi, my name is Jenja. Ganja, but it's pronounced Ganja. Today I want to talk about the book that introduced me to the world of memory and that completely changed my life. And that book is called Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer. Mine says Moonwalking with Einstein because it's in Swedish. It was gifted to me by a college friend of mine called Leona while we were studying in Sweden. The first time I encountered the book, I was rushing from college to home and I saw this book in the pocket shop and it said Moonwalking with Einstein. And I looked at the cover and it just kind of like, it looked so intriguing. I just wanted to know what it was about. So I started skimming, but then I kept standing there and reading it, and then like the store clerk started looking at me funny, so then I put it back. As a frugal student, I went to the library right next door called the student bibliothèque, and they just so happened to have the book in English, and I read it on the way home on the subway, and then I read it at home, and it was like 1 a.m. and I had finished reading it in one night because it was so intriguing. So even if you're not interested in memory techniques or you think they're not for you, this book is really good. It's recommended by Bill Gates and recommended by me. Our recommendations are the same level. So the book is about Joshua Foer, the author, a journalist, who was on assignment to write about the U.S. memory championships. And while he's there, he's really intrigued by the seemingly enormous memory capacity of these participants. He starts talking to them, and one of them starts telling him that anyone can do this. He's not convinced, but then he starts training, and then he starts training enough to realize that maybe he can compete at the next year's championship. You follow this man in his journey throughout the intricacies of the world of memory, which is both like super nerdy and widely just human. This is a book to create a solid foundational understanding of memory techniques and memory as a whole. It is a great and fascinating story. It introduces fancy things like the major system and the memory palace. They sound really fancy, but aren't really the basics of memory techniques. And I always say this, that memory is easier done than said. You always sound crazy when you try to explain memory techniques, but when you start using it, it starts getting very self-explanatory, in my opinion. So why I like this book more than some other books that might be more in-depth about techniques and specific things you can use to apply to law school, med school, even though there are lots of non-fiction books that just say like, do this and that, A, B, C, D, E of memory, they're not as intriguing and they don't pull you in. And you ironically don't remember the techniques as well as when you read this book, in my opinion. This ties into the whole memory thing, that when you put things in context and you make it more emotional or more engaging, you will remember it better than if you're just like regurgitating or following a set of rules. The brain has a tendency to remember story better than just like facts. So that's one.
So what she ends with there is that the brain is more likely to remember a story than just facts, which I thought was really interesting. And this book, I heard about this book last week, and I actually bought it the weekend, and I've not finished it in the night, but I've nearly finished it, because it is actually really, really fascinating. The World Memory Championships is something that I suppose I didn't really think too much about. I think I'd heard that people could regurgitate lots of numbers and names and things. But she talks about in a different clip how there are actually, it's mainly guys that do this, first of all. They don't look like her. She's kind of quite funky looking, isn't she? And kind of like quite nerdy looking guys that do it, and they just memorize all these numbers. But the same thing happened to Joshua as happened to her. They basically thought, these are memory techniques and I'm going to try and learn how to do this. And then she is now like one of the memory champions of the world. So in terms of having a better memory, you can actually train your brain to remember things. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go and do memory training to try and regurgitate long lists of numbers, because you don't really need to necessarily do that, but there are ways that you can work on improving your memory. And it's to do with, if you think about creative and emotional memory. So because we can remember stories and we can remember emotions much more easily, and sensory memory, so like I talked about, if you have an experience and you're eating a certain food and you can smell it, and you might smell that food again, it will take you back to that memory, you have a stronger emotion. And there's a guy in history who is the only person, apparently, who they think could actually remember everything. You really could remember everything. You could say to him what happened last week and he could just say everything. But he had a condition that meant that all of his senses were heightened. So he really, everything that happened to him. He could smell it and feel it and touch it. And actually that meant he had a stronger memory, which is quite interesting. And actually one thing to remember, it is easy to remember things if you understand them, so trying to understand what you're remembering will help you. So in terms of your brain, the hippocampus is, it's actually two parts of your brain. It's like the two sides that come down, and that's where your memories are stored. Hippocampus comes from the word seahorse, which is the Greek word for seahorse, because they kind of look a little bit like seahorses that come down. And the amygdala is what controls your emotions. And what's really crazy, as something emotional happens, your amygdala lights up almost, and your hippocampus will remember. So actually, the more emotion you put into it, then you will remember it better, which I think is really quite fascinating. So one of the things that she mentioned in the video was this thing called a memory palace, and people, you may have heard about this before, people that remember like really complex lists of numbers. What they actually do is they put it in a memory palace, and anyone can have a memory palace, anyone can build their own memory palace. And all a memory palace is a place that you know really, really well. So actually Yendra's memory palace is actually a route that she remembers from walking from one place to somewhere else. And it's quite a long route. And as she walks around the route that she knows really well, she places those objects. But as she thinks about the objects, she makes them kind of emotional objects or bizarre. So the more bizarre the better, basically. So if you look here, you get your fact, whatever it is you have to remember, try and convert it into some sort of picture or something a bit more bizarre. And then you have your path that you're going to follow, which might be your house, because you know that quite well and how you get around it. Then you place your pictures as you go around it, and then all you have to do is go to that memory palace to remember it. So thinking about school, if you've got something that you're trying to learn, like you have to know it off by heart, it might be that the things that you're learning in science, you try and remember them in your science room, like place it around. And then when you get into that exam, actually, if you can just take yourself back there, you were more likely to remember it. And if you come up with funny ways to remember it, I'm sure your teachers have talked to you about this, like funny things that you remember, then you're more likely to remember it. But if you actually put it in a place, put that object or that thing you have to remember, put it somewhere, then all you have to do is go to that place, go to that memory as if you've been there, and you will remember it. It's quite fascinating when you learn, if you do more research on this. I've got more videos which I'm going to give to your tutors actually that you can watch in tutor time. So just we're going to hear from Yendra just one more time before we go, that you might think, why would you want to become better at memory techniques? Because actually, being better at remembering things actually doesn't mean you're going to be more intelligent, it just means you're better at remembering things. But the better you are at remembering things, then that's going to help you in other bits of life. So just quickly watch this video.
We're going to talk about how memory training is actually helpful for your real life. I got this question the most when I memorized the IKEA catalog of 2018. Long story short, people watched that video and they thought, well, that's neat and cool and all, but how is that helpful for me? Which is funny because people don't usually watch like the Olympics and see Simone Biles do pirouettes and flips and go, well, that's nice and all, but how is that helpful for me? There is one aspect of it, which is the competitive and the entertainment, but then the practical aspect is that Simone in her own life is probably benefiting a lot from being so athletic. It's probably helping her mental health and her physical health a lot. In the same way, memory training, there is a competitive and entertaining aspect to it, but there's also the real life application. It doesn't mean that just because you're good at memorizing in a competitive setting that you have a better memory, but you do have a better memory compared to your own self. So for example, it is helpful in studying because you're learning to connect new information with old information and what you already know with what you want to know. It helps with remembering things in your day-to-day life because you have this habit. So because you have this memorizing mindset, when you forget words or you forget names or facts or figures, you're more likely to try to think of what it is and try to connect the dots instead of just saying, oh, I don't know, let's just give up. The third thing is that it's helpful for languages and tip of the tongue syndrome. Would have been funny if I forgot what tip of the tongue syndrome was. Tip of the tongue syndrome is when you have something on the tip of your tongue. You know that you should know this information. And what I've noticed since doing memory training is that I have a higher tendency to not give up, and I try to look for where I can connect the dots to try to find what it is I'm thinking of, or try to name an actress or name something. That is just the basics of it. I don't think that just because memory training is so abstract that it's not helpful in your real life. Actually, there are two people who's up.
So, just before we finish, well, since I've been reading about these memory techniques, I'm really bad at names. That's something I'm really bad at. So when people introduce themselves to me, I know I'm not listening. I do it all the time. They'll just say their name and then they'll carry on talking. I think, I didn't hear that. I just wasn't listening. So one of the things I do is I turn my brain onto learning mode. So when people introduce themselves, I actually turn myself on. You have to remember this. That's number one. And then the second thing I've started doing since reading about these memory techniques is actually trying to visualize something funny to do with their names. So an example of what you might do, so my name's Christine Hamilton. So if someone was trying to learn my name, you might think, when they think about me, think about Christmas and having ham at Christmas and the smell of ham and what that would be like. And actually, if you just do that with the person that you meet, you are more likely to remember their name. There's quite a lot of studies on why that is, because you've taken the time to actually think about a way to remember that person's name. Anyway, so just to end, I just want you to reflect for a moment. Are you ready? Is your brain in learning mode for today, for this week? Think about what you're going to do to make yourself a better person, a better learner. Right, thank you very much. Is there any more announcements no one's coming?